Hey guys, just before the video starts, I have a small announcement to make, because over the last couple of days, I've gone and joined UnVale. To those who don't know, UnVale is a place for artists and other such creative people to share their original characters. They have a strict no AI and never NFT policy, so your art is sure to be safe with them, and there's a lot of room for customization when making your characters' profiles. Just to clarify, I'm not being sponsored here. I just wanted to talk about UnVale because I genuinely love the idea behind this site. As someone who has so many original characters but never has time to talk about them, this is a really great way for me to share them all with people who are interested. Plus it gives me an incentive to give them all up-to-date art, so that's great too. If you want to check out UnVale, I'll leave a link in the description. I'm going to keep adding more of my OCs to UnVale in the future, so stay tuned for updates. With that all said and done, on with the video. So we're finally getting back to Sinnoh Gym Leader redesigns. To those who haven't already seen, I started this redesign project last month, because the Sinnoh characters were sadly robbed of the chance to get redesigns in the remakes. And I do want to say this, I don't mean to be negative or judging towards the original designs. This is just for fun, to show what these characters could have looked like if they got a visual update. In the last video, I redesigned 4 of the gym leaders, Fantina, Byron, Rourke, and Gardenia. If you want to see what I did for those 4, I suggest you check out the previous video. I'll leave a link in the description, or the cards, or the pinned comment, or probably all 3. But for this second part, we're going to be tackling the other 4 gym leaders of the Sinnoh region, Candice, Maylene, Krita, and Volkner. There's no particular order for this, aside from the order I drew them in, so let's get started. So going into the second round, I thought I was going to start with Krita, but I guess I was feeling a bit intimidated, a bit short on ideas and all, so I instead decided to start with Candice. She's our resident ice-type specialist, and her gym is in Snowpoint City, the coldest place in Sinnoh. So you might be wondering, if that's the case, why she's wearing a short skirt and bare legs. Honestly, it's not that weird to me. Here in the UK, there are loads of people who dress in short sleeves and shorts when it's freezing or pouring with rain. Some people just don't feel the cold, they're just built different. Though in Candice's case, it's because she's very fashion forward. I'm sure what I just said about not feeling the cold applies to her too, but that's what they say in the games, so that's what we're going with. So I let Candice keep the short skirt, but I did make her socks longer. And what with her love for fashion, I thought it made sense to add some accessories. Given the big bow on her shirt, I decided to give her some more ribbons, putting them in the place of her hair clips. Speaking of the hair, I was sure to keep the braided pigtails intact. They're an iconic part of her design after all. But to lean more into the ice type, I gave them more of a diamond shape, so they'd kind of look like ice crystals. I also really wanted to give her some proper bangs, that being the hair on the fringe. I'm personally not a fan of bare foreheads, and it always felt like her head area was kind of lacking, so I was sure to address that. But anyway, let's get back to her outfit. Something I'm doing for all of these redesigns is adding some elements that match the gym leader's signature Pokemon, and this was admittedly a bit of a struggle for Candice. The way I see it, she has 2 signature Pokemon, Abomasnow and Frostlass, but I was having a hard time finding ways to reference these 2. At first, I was going to shape the hair ribbons to match Abomasnow's head shape, but I didn't like how it looked, so I scrapped the idea. I had several other ideas, but I was trying my hardest not to clutter the design, since Pokemon designs are meant to be simple, so a lot of them ended up being scrapped. In the end though, I did manage to add a few references to Frostlass. I made the shirt sleeves end in light blue, which kind of matches Frostlass's arms. I also gave her a purple scarf, matching another of Frostlass's colours. I was trying to shape the scarf to look like a Frostlass arm, but I kept not liking the execution, so I just made it a normal scarf in the end. And there we go, here's our finished Candice. And here's the original design for comparison. I think my favourite change was how I covered the braids in snow, giving them a bit of a gradient effect. Maybe that had caused them to blend in with the snow, but I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. So after finishing Candice, the next redesign on my list was Maylene, the fighting type gym leader. She and Candice are actually close friends in canon, so it only made sense to draw them back to back. Now this redesign has a bit of a story to it. At first, I was thinking of the Pokemon Adventures manga, where Maylene is written to be very poor. And when she's out in the snow, she says that she dresses lightly because it's, quote, all I can afford. This was likely based on the fact that her dad in the game spends all of his time gambling at the game corner. But as I started to Speedpaint, I came to realise that this really doesn't make sense. For starters, I feel like her portrayal in Adventures is contradictory to the games. Yes, she dresses lightly in the snow, but she outright states that she's used to the cold, and she'd rather run for fitness than use Fly to get to Snow Point. Also, just looking at Maylene's outfit, nothing about it reads as poor to me. It looks like pretty standard gym wear. So while a poor man's scrapwork outfit sounded like fun, I didn't think it was fitting for Maylene. And also, that style is way out of my wheelhouse. I wouldn't know where to start. So I kept things faithful to her original style. The first idea I had for Maylene was to add elements of a karate uniform, since martial arts are the whole aesthetic of the fighting type. But since the sleeveless top is so iconic to her, I basically just gave her the bottom half of a karate uniform. That meant adding a kind of skirt thing over the trousers, alongside the iconic karate belt. I also wanted Maylene and Candice to have some matching design elements, since they're friends and all, and the inclusion of the skirt thing was perfect for that. Along with the belt, it kind of reminds me of Candice having a jumper around her waist. Speaking of the belt, I wanted it to match with Lucario, Maylene's signature Pokemon, so I gave it some triangle patterns at the ends, to match with Lucario's arms. Later on in the process, I also gave Maylene a headband for extra flair, with the ends on the back being a match for Lucario's ears. As for some other changes, I thought that Maylene would be the sort to wrap bandages around her arms. It felt fitting, what with the bandages on her nose. I also thought of putting bandage wraps on her hands to make them makeshift gloves. But in the end, I decided to give her regular gloves, but still added that kind of wrap to them. And finally, I also added some bandages to her feet. As much as I don't like drawing toes, I did have to keep Maylene barefoot. After all, her title is the Barefoot Fighting Genius, but I thought the foot bandages would make them look a bit more stylish. And here we are, here's the finished Maylene. This one took me the shortest time out of all these redesigns, and it was pretty fun overall, especially the pose. Although the hair was definitely tricky, it took me a few tries to get it right. And now, we finally get around to the design that I wanted to do first. That's right, it's time for the Water-type gym leader, the Torrential Masked Master, Crasher Wake himself! Man, he's such a fun character. So right out the gate, drawing Wake was a big change of pace. I didn't have much experience with big beefy characters, but it's actually something I really enjoy. Since I didn't have to follow my usual proportion style, I can just make stuff up and have a lot more fun with shapes. Though that being said, there was one thing I was nervous about, and that was the face. And it's all because he's wearing a mask. I've always had a tough time drawing masks, because of the way I draw faces. As it turns out, when your art style tends to have bigger eyes, that makes it really hard to draw a mask that's designed around smaller eyes. It took me a while to build the face around the mask, but with some heavy referencing, it really wasn't too bad. I ended up giving Wake a different type of eyes than what I usually draw, where they have a full outline. More like cartoon eyes than anime eyes. And of course, I kept the fun angular shape of his original eyes. But now that we're done with the face, we're on to the design, and he's perfect. What more can I change? No, but in all seriousness, Wake already has a super solid design. He's clearly based on luchadors, and when I looked up references, I found he does a really good job of capturing the look. Not to mention, his design has some great references to two of his Pokemon, with the mask resembling Gyarados and the orange accents matching with Floatzel. Though that being said, there is one part of the luchador style that I knew I could add. So I decided to give Crasher Wake a cape. I mean, come on, how could I not? Capes are the coolest thing ever. So that's what I did. But admittedly, while I like the inclusion of the cape, I wish I added more. I considered changing the colours to add more white from the mask, but I didn't like how it looked. Besides, the orange matches his signature Floatzel, so I couldn't take it away. I think I could have changed the style of the trousers and given him a different belt, but I just didn't. And I think that's because I have a bad habit of stopping with my research. Like, I see a couple of good things, but then I'm satisfied with what I see and I don't look for more. But at the end of the day, I think it's good that I've caught on to this habit. Hopefully I can get a bit better at looking up references in the future. And honestly, I'm just happy that I got to draw Crash Awake. Again, this is a really fun design, and I don't draw this kind of stuff often. I'd love to draw more characters with this kind of shape. I'd love to put more practice into drawing masks, and just... man, this was fun! So now, we only have one redesign left to tackle. And fittingly enough, it happens to be the last gym leader in Sinnoh. Also my favourite gym leader in Sinnoh, Volkner. Now going into this redesign, I had a clear direction from the start. I've never really done a punk design before, but I love the aesthetic, so I was looking forward to this. Though this did present a challenge. Like I said before, Pokemon designs tend to be simple, but the punk aesthetic is all about heavy decorations. Like, look at this! Look at how many studs there are! And like with Crash Awake, I think that Volkner's original design did a good job at simplifying the punk aesthetic, particularly with the studs. It's definitely one of my favourite Sinnoh designs. So going into this redesign, I figured that the best starting point was to do some research. So I looked up punk jackets, and my first idea was to give him these... lapels? I think they're called lapels. That's what you call them on a suit coat, so I'll just stick with lapels. In case you can't tell, I am not a fashion-forward person. I like how punk jackets would have the lapels facing outward and load them with accessories, so that's the direction I went with. And for the accessories in question, I went with star-shaped pins that match Luxray's tail. And later on, I changed the shape of the lapels to look like lightning bolts, very fitting for an electric-type specialist. I also made the jacket pinned in the centre, rather than being fully open like in the original design. As for some other accessories, I knew I wanted to give Volkner some patches. My sister has a jacket that's absolutely covered in patches and pins, it's super cool. But to keep the design simple, I just went with 2 patches, which show off his 2 signature Pokemon, Electivire and Luxray. I imagine the back of the jacket has a bunch more patches, but I'll leave that to your imagination. And for the last major change, I wanted to give Volkner some sunglasses. Because for one, how could I not? Blacktail sunglasses definitely fit the vibe. But also, he does live in Sunyshore City, the always sunny coast of the Sinnoh region, so it makes perfect sense. Initially I wanted to draw 2 versions of this art, one with sunglasses off and one with them on, but I didn't really like how they looked over his eyes, so I decided to scrap it. In hindsight though, I totally could have given the sunglasses a better shape, they're too rectangular. Oh well, I'll put that on the study list. Hopefully I'll remember to practice them. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. So here's the finished Volkner. In hindsight, I probably should have made his hair fan out more, but I still really enjoyed making this design. And I also made a black colour swap to further embody the punk vibes, just for fun. But there we have it. I finally finished redesigns for every Sinnoh gym leader. This has been a fun project for sure, and I do like how these redesigns turned out. My favourite is definitely still Fantina, but I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, let me know your favourites, and feel free to share how you'd redesign these characters yourself. I'm not sure if I'll ever come back to Sinnoh redesigns, but there's certainly a possibility. I could do the Stat Trainers or the Elite Four, but I don't know. We'll see what the future has in store. But there's definitely going to be more Pokemon in the future of this channel. If you haven't seen it yet, I recently put out my first Pokemon video in a good long while, talking about my fan region starter Pokemon. And I'm thinking I want to evolve those starters in the next couple of videos, so keep an eye out for that. And just in general, if you like the look of my art, I've got a lot more videos on this channel where I share and talk about it, so be sure to check them out if you're interested. I also have an Instagram account where I post much more consistently, so definitely follow me there. And again, you can also check out my UnVale account that I started recently, where I talk about my OCs. There's a link to that in the description too. But regardless, that's all from me. Stay hopeful, don't give up on your dreams, remember to use that fancy TM you got from the gym leader, and I'll see you all next time!